Welcome to the Counterweight podcast. I am Doug Rogers, Chief Revenue Officer and Managing Partner for Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. And I'm joined weekly by my co-host, James Kanary, founder and owner of the Upper Right Corner. Together, we are focused on speaking to and learning from growth leaders across the healthcare space about their journeys and lessons learned. James and I want to explore how growth leaders manage this tension not only for their teams, but also with their leaders and in many cases, board members and investors. We will discuss with our guests the career journey they have been on, key influences that help them put them into the position they are today. We will talk about successes and challenges, what they learned from these events for themselves and for their teams. Join us each week for a new episode with our guest. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the name The Counterweight Podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, and give us feedback as we go along. Now on to the show. Welcome to the Counterweight Podcast. I'm Doug Rogers, and I'm joined by my co-host, James Kanary, and we are super excited to have Casey Schirck on the pod from downtown Kansas City. Now, look, guys, I am a self-avowed Schirck. I am a self-avowed Kansas Cityan. I've adopted this city, and I love the fact that not only is Casey bringing his experience, his expertise, but he is in the heart of the city, and he's bringing that fake background. It's not a fake background.
That's a real background. Can you?
This is fake. That's not.
Give me a tap on the window.
I see people washing windows back there.
That's right.
Make sure that a bird doesn't fly into it. Casey, it's great to have you on the pod. Let's start. Just tell our listeners where you are these days, what you're doing, what your role looks like, and then we'll dive into the fun.
Yeah, perfect. Guys, thank you very much. Doug and James, first of all, just super honored, to be able to talk with you. I've seen some of the guests that you've had on, and it was just kind of a aha moment of how important it is to keep your network close to you. So love what you guys are doing and love the podcast. I am a senior vice president at Commerce Bank, downtown Kansas City.
Wait, what?
You're a banker?
Oh, this is awkward.
So
awkward. We thought this was a healthcare show, and he's
there
with
you
the
go.
bank. So, hey, it's been good talking to you. Thank you, Casey.
Time to shut it down now.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Great background. Have a great day. No, all right, come on.
All right.
Tell us the story.
You're hitting something that was a surprise to me also. I'll start dropping some names that, will increase your listener, your viewership by tenfold. Rick Heisey, Sue Martin.
Yeah.
I mean, great leaders in healthcare, IT, reached out and started having conversations with me, 3+ years ago. And I was also, just like you, I've lived in Kansas City for more than 20 years. And I did not know, I was shocked to learn that one of the biggest employers in Kansas City in the Midwest has a division, and we're talking about a large group of people, a large organization focused solely on healthcare, focused on revenue cycle in healthcare across the entire United States. And so, I had the privilege of starting those conversations with some of the folks that I mentioned. And, over the course of multiple years, had conversations about different roles and, timing and I landed here. And I know we're not supposed to talk about, anything time related. This is my third week at Commerce, and
congratulations.
And I'm just so
happy.
And I'll touch on that in a little while too.
Yeah,
but
looking good though, by the way. And you can take the tag off the blazer now. I think you've been there.
I can't return it then.
Well, it has commerce on the inside.
He's best dressed already.
Sure.
So.
That's
sure.
right. I imagine, one of the perks that got you over the line is the fact that you were going to have a downtown office in Kansas City. That's probably really all they had to say to convince you to make the transition in. In all seriousness, though,
Casey, touch on a little bit around the scope and the focus that commerce has in healthcare, because I think you're exactly right. Very few people would point at a bank and say they are impacting healthcare access delivery and affordability in our nation, but I believe that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. So if you think about healthcare in the United States, first of all, is think about it as an economy of itself, right? Think about the payers. Think about, the coding that goes into the medical bills to be correct and accurate so that things don't get denied. The reality is, and I'm not overselling this statement. The reality is that funding into the healthcare ecosystem is what continues it being an ecosystem. Without the funding, and here we're talking about accounts payable and accounts receivable, without the funding, without the flow of money in and out of our healthcare system, and at a pace of little to no friction, then the entire healthcare system would crash. And so, again, what I and there, like, maybe we'll touch on this later, but things that are so pivotally important to healthcare providers, community hospitals, critical access to the largest systems is, the financial pressure is so great that, credit ratings are starting to change for health systems in a negative manner. The number of days of cash on hand that they could operate, their business is diminishing. And but part of the reason why I came to commerce, there's multiple reasons, but the timing of this, I am emphatic that I believe that the healthcare economy in the United States, there's so much pressure on it that if we don't have leaders and organizations focused on the funding, again, payments and also receivables within the ecosystem, there's going to be a huge problem here in the next 5 to 10 years.
I think that's spot on. And here in a moment, just to spend a couple extra minutes around the service or value proposition that commerce is bringing to the table, whether it's for a community hospital or a health system. But I would point out for our listeners, I think everyone in healthcare remembers this. It wasn't that long ago, but the Change Healthcare event.
That's right.
And the impact that it had on hospitals, but especially practices, and the delay in payment that actually led to a number of practices either having to shut the doors because they couldn't make payroll, or forced an acquisition where they were trying to remain independent because they couldn't make payroll. And I think for the average person, you see a doctor's office or you see a hospital, and you don't think about they have those problems. People go in, people come out, they're getting paid day and night, but you don't think that, hey, that is a real fundamental issue that they deal with. Talk a little bit about what commerce is doing to help either address that, solve that, or be a value add to your healthcare partners.
Yeah. So again, I'm huge asterisks here. So this is Casey Schirk's comments.
I love those comments.
And we can kind of go from there. So specifically, Doug, back to your question, the things within our portfolio and span of offerings that I'd like to focus, so I don't make the answer too long. Number one is patient financing for healthcare, right? For balances. So think about the percentage of people in the United States that are challenged by paying for their care, whether they have insurance or not, right? That there is a balance, whether it's 100% or a portion of it, that, the patient person is responsible for. And, the percentage of those that can't make the payment, the first month that it's due. And so, one of a very big piece of Commerce's portfolio is partnering with health systems, offering a solution where the bank will take on that responsibility. And I say that in a fact that I'm very proud of this, because the goal is, in the initial offering, that the patients actually have a zero interest approach to paying off their healthcare. So patient financing, and we can go into the myriad of why that's important for both the patient and the providers.
I mean, that's huge, Casey. Having dealt with families, knowing people in the community that are one medical event away,
for sure,
from bankruptcy, from financial ruin. And on top of that, they may not know how to navigate the health system. They may not know how to deal with medical debt. And so to have that option of the zero interest is huge, because those are serious fees. Like, they're even just a copays can be difficult, let alone like whatever their patient responsibility is from that surgery or that emergency room visit or whatever.
That's right. And so think about for the provider, the hospital or the health system, having a percentage of their patient population that is challenged with the payments for the care that they receive. So those revenues are slowly or potentially not even coming in, right?
Right.
And the answer to Commerce is, hey, we'll sign up for this, and we're going to give you the lump sum total back due upon the bill drop, right? And so going back to that cash on hand and days of operation, I mean, there's a tangible solution there. The other piece is working with the providers for, and again, I'm going to oversimplify it for everybody who is still tuned in to listening to me talk, is the number of payers on the back end where the hospitals need to connect to in an efficient electronic manner, right? Rather than, you guys would be shocked at the number of paper checks that are still being received by payers, and
not from people, but from
both. Yes.
Wow.
And so
I am shocked. I was like, I can believe the person, but I just wow, that's
So the hundreds of payer sources that even a small health system has to deal with, and think about every single patient, every single episode of care is a transaction. And so that compounds, we have examples of, there are hundreds of thousands of transactions that hospitals have to deal with, these manual touches to secure revenue. And we have a capability of automating all of that. And so again, back to Change Healthcare, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a secure platform, processing payments, processing PHI, account name, account information that's coming in envelopes and paper, that's not good. And so again, just a myriad of value adds there.
Well, and just maybe back up a little bit to the landscape that we're dealing with in healthcare. And part of the naming of this podcast was around mission,
right,
and margin. And so, I remember a long time ago hearing from even especially like the faith-based health systems, which, by the way, hospitals were all started by essentially faith-based organizations in the U.S. And so their mantra would be, hey, no margin, no mission. So we can't fulfill our mission if we don't have healthy margins. The margins in healthcare, especially on the provider side, are very, very thin. So a few days of cash outstanding, bad debt from patients who cannot pay, I mean, those things add up. And these organizations are already running on very thin margins, and they have to compete, especially in cities like Kansas City, for the best resources. So they've got to pay for the best resources to be on their staff. and yet their margins are razor thin, and so anything you can do to impact that is huge.
Yeah, let's talk about the specifics of that for a minute, James. Right? And again, part of the reason why it came to commerce. None of us can. There's not a single organization, IT company, service provider that can answer and solve that problem.
Right.
So there needs to be a series of companies and solutions to address a sliver of what you just described. And again, going back to specifics, Becker's put out a list within the last month of the top performing health systems and hospitals based on operating net revenue, right? And margin, okay? Margin. What's shocking is you take away the tenants and the HCA, the top that are performing with double-digit margins, and we can talk about that in another podcast. But the top 15, you're talking about less than a 2% margin on net patient revenue.
That's grocery store margins right there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's worse than a lot of retail.
Yeah.
So this is something I want to give a shout out to my last employer, Iodine Software. Great company, great product, driving large return and value for an AI solution. Okay. They're doing great. My experience over the last several years is CFOs get presented ROI, return business cases from every single software supplier here, healthcare IT, this group, right? And there's a stated ROI. So you either need to be focused on two different areas. One is the grand slam, hitting out of the park, a sound business case that has a double-digit ROI based on the investment. There are companies that do that. However, the CFOs are so pressured today, board-directed, revenue transformation projects with actual targets that have to be hit every fiscal year. 24's done, and so I will, the greatest number, the greatest percentage, right? The majority of hospitals and health systems have a revenue transformation project number that is directed by the board in fiscal year 25 to hit. And the CFOs are looking at all of these business cases on their desk. And I truly believe that there's so much pressure that they're prioritizing not necessarily on the biggest ROI slam dunk home run, but they're looking at what is the most sound, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because they're skeptical, right?
Yes.
Being CFOs, they're naturally skeptical, but they've had a decade or two now of ROIs on their desk.
That's right. They cannot risk it. And so you look at Commerce Bank, right? Some facts, for your listeners. Commerce Bank has been around for over 150 years, right? They're doing business with over 500 hospitals and health systems. They're HFMA peer reviewed. I mean, the number of things that I can say that validate, the service offerings and what Commerce Bank is doing in healthcare, it reduces the risk to the CFO. And so, our costs for our solutions are minimal. Our ROI is can be great, but it might not be as big as an AI software solution. But what gets elevated is they can count on it, right? They can go
stability, track record.
There's a financial ledger that they know exactly what the problem is and what the improvement is. And so it's, I apologize for the pun, but it's bankable.
Bankable.
And those.
That's a great.
Doug, can we do the graphic across the screen?
We can absolutely
cha-ching or something. Get some sound effects in there. I don't know if our budget has that, but we'll find it somewhere.
That is probably the best pun. I've heard.
I think
yet.
I'm the first person at Commerce Bank to say that.
And you probably are. You're breaking new ground,
maybe
Casey.
the last.
The Counterweight is honored to be sponsored by the Echelon by Amy Teskey. The Echelon is intentional about building community and sharing expertise for healthcare technology sellers and leaders. The Echelon provides members curated content, educational materials, and the ability to connect with peers and leaders specific to healthcare technology. Sales can be hard. It is made easier when you are part of a community that is focused on enabling you to be your best. Take an opportunity to invest in yourself. Join the Echelon. Use the code Counterweight and gain the ability to participate for the first 30 days at no cost. Thank you to Amy Teskey and the Echelon for your sponsorship. Now back to the episode.
So one thing you got me thinking about, just the challenges of the thin margins. And I remember this was a while ago, but I was part of a larger company that was very growth oriented and had rocket ship growth. So we were, we do the whole corporate overview thing.
Yeah, sure.
And we were presenting to a community provider, and our intent was to just share like, hey, how stable we are, how, fast growing and innovative we are. And there was data around our margins and our growth. And it actually was a turnoff for that client. So it's one of those lessons for me. I was like, oh, wow. Like the thing that I thought we were strong at and that would build confidence in us actually made that particular client was like, well, you don't understand me because I'm dealing with single digit margins and you're over here talking about double digit growth and double digit margins. So I think just for me, that was a wake up call of, wow, I really need to understand and get in the boat with these organizations that have very thin margins.
Yeah. And James, that's kind of a profound observation and a factual, right? What's interesting is that there's so many different software companies that are looking to become the next big giant thing in healthcare IT. And in order, back to what you're saying, James, in order to do that, you've got a very large bottom right hand, cost, right? Maybe your value proposition supports that, but I am amazed at the totality of, spend in healthcare IT and, being a part of an organization that, you are fundamentally completely aligned that cost is going to be offset by a return. And that mission and margin, back to your earlier statement, that's so important for the providers. But then it's also so interesting. I've been a part of a number of startup, smaller companies as well. It's so interesting how dedicated a CEO's commitment to mission will be when there's increased pressure from the board and investors to grow revenue. How does that mission change? And, and from a growth leader, how do you balance that mission and margin on the healthcare IT company side also, as you're also delivering that, value, each of you are, wired the same way as me, where you're so committed to doing the right thing on the provider side. And also you need to appease, your board and investor group. The balance for, growth leaders is a delicate one.
So sure. It's almost like a counterweight. Is that what you're saying?
Boy, that is
a great name for a podcast, by the way.
It would be.
Put that in there. We need some graphics.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because you've been part of startups. You've been part of different companies that are maybe more of the speedboat or the raft that's, floating around versus now you're part of a larger organization in Commerce Healthcare within Commerce Bank. So talk about kind of that difference. Does it change how you approach clients? Does it change how you, when you talk a lot about ROI has never been more important, but also ROI is kind of like everybody says they do that. So like, how are you finding the differences to be so far? Is it a different approach in terms of how you deal with your customers, how you deal with your clients, and then how do you create that sustainable sort of 100-year growth plan versus the 10-month growth plan?
Yeah. That's a great question and a deep one. What I think is important as a growth leader, regardless of level, right? Whether you're a director or vice president or chief revenue officer, what's important for you is to understand that there are different parts within a company that are completely going to dictate your ability to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And on the startup side, on the small business side, right? I'm going to start with what's top of mind. Product has to be there. It has to be there. Or you can make your initial sales and you can make your first couple of quarters revenue target, but once the company starts to deliver it, if the product isn't there, you're going to have a problem.
I found that out the hard way, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, not at previously named companies. We won't name any, but yeah, there's a lot of that out there where a lot of great PowerPoints, smoke and mirrors.
That's right.
No product.
And right. So we'll leave it there. You also, you need a brand, right? You need some form of brand and marketing support, right, to hit those things. So going back to, what makes commerce interesting is I am number one, my intention is to build a team of people, growth-oriented people that I absolutely believe can be working together for the next 5 to 10 years, right? So I'm looking for a different organizational type than what I built at smaller startup companies, right? You're focused on the here and now. I got to drive revenue this year, and you're looking for I'll just say a different type of sales organization.
Right.
And the same thing on strategy. Your go-to-market strategy is different when you are looking for, I'll call it sustained, predictable growth rather than, looking for the grand slam every time.
Or new logos, just getting a bunch of new logos.
Absolutely.
Which I just think everything you're saying begs the question, why don't more companies take that approach? Because we've seen the last several years there was a lot of crazy money getting invested in healthcare through PE companies, some good, some bad. And there was a lot of this focus on becoming the unicorn. And some of us got caught up in that. Some of us did really well and some didn't. And yet there wasn't this long game there, right? It was all about, well, let's get the valuation up and get a bunch of logos and then sell. Is like, why don't more companies think about the longer game? Is it because we're impatient? Is it because why don't more people do that? I want to be around. I want my company to be around in 150 years.
For sure. I think part of, and this might not be like the answer, but what does come to my mind is, in order for a company to facilitate that type of approach and strategy, there has to be a certain, I'll call it, environment nationally within economics, right? What's happening on a national scale? What's happening to interest rate levels? What's the ability to get cash? What is the ability to get the next round of investment, for capital influx? There's times where interest rates go up and, I'll say big investment injections of cash are less attractive to investors. And so there's more of the need for sales to act quickly, and there's going to be more, I'll say even greater pressure, on quarterly results, because again, everybody has a mission and margin, need, right?
Well, and go ahead.
I was thinking about, like, I literally was thinking about this for the first time, and thinking about some of the questions that you guys might be asking, and the answer that I just gave. I never really, I knew it at the time, but I never thought about it, deep into my Cerner career. I don't know what, I think, James, you and I started at about the same time, but think about what was happening from a national perspective. I started Cerner in April or May of 2007. Okay. As a single contributor sales executive, new to healthcare, new to Cerner, I needed to go prove myself. And what happened nationally in Q4 of 2007 was a Great Recession.
Yeah.
A multi-year recession that hit. And so, I look back at my first year at Cerner, and boy, what would have happened to me personally if I didn't have that big idea, in my first year that I think actually set the trajectory of my career off. Like, what would happen if I didn't interact with, the leaders and try to make a name for myself in that very first year? I think I could have been a casualty of, the end of year reorganization, that year. And my entire life would be different today.
Yeah, it is interesting to go back and think about these pivotal moments that impact both at a micro and a macro level, if you will. I'm going to be I don't know that it's contrarian, but I'm going to have a bit of a rant, if you will, to James, to your question. And Casey, I'd love your reaction here. Your comment around why do we not see more sustainable growth? And I'm just simply going to say, there's too much money.
Right.
There's too much money.
By the way, the answer is always money.
Well, the answer is
when
always
my
money.
my kids are asked, well, why did Tyreek Hill get traded, Dad? We love Tyreek Hill. Son, it's money.
But and here's what I mean by this, and I think this is an interesting contrast: commerce versus other companies that are purely in the healthcare space. There has been this proliferation of investment dollars going into digital health. That's a great thing. I think we all value competition. We value innovation, and seeing more investment come into this space is a net positive writ large. However, that investment is being turned from other vertical markets where that buying behavior, that buying dynamic either goes faster, there's different expectations, the friction around how people choose, use, and then lose, if you will, the logo is different than it's in healthcare. And yet these dollars come into a healthcare company, and the expectation, if you're on the VC side, is double, triple, and then boom. In the dynamic, at least, what I've seen, Casey, you may have seen a slightly different dynamic in some of the stops that you had, is that there is incredible pressure on the logo revenue generation side, less so on the margin and profitability side. Some of that certainly is changing as we've come out of the pandemic, and some of the investment pieces have stalled, and those dynamics are playing out. But it is growth at all cost, and I think that's a problem writ large. But I think in healthcare it's a huge problem, because you are selling to people that are delivering care, delivering life-saving abilities, health and wellness abilities to people. And the churn, the friction that you create when you're not thinking about how can I be sustainable, has a real life impact on whether or not these things are actually providing value in a very material way that's impacting somebody's life.
Long-term
value. That's my rant.
No, what I'm concluding is your healthcare is a long game, right? Think about how many companies have tried. Like, think about
and the
Google
investment
Health,
thesis should be
Microsoft. I mean, even some of these big aircraft carrier companies have tried to get into healthcare and failed. Amazon, all these. So, like, it's a long game. Why do we think we can just come in as a startup and just get it done in 10 months or 18 months or 2 years or 3. I mean, so to the broader point is, I think you want to grow in a long game market, you got to play the long game. And I'm just really encouraged by what I'm hearing from you, Casey, is, Commerce Bank, Commerce Healthcare is not in it for the quick, oh, let's build a unicorn and sell it. I'm not sensing any of that. I'm getting that, like, this is a 150-year game.
Yeah. Yeah. This is for the first time since, the start of my career at Cerner, I have a full intention and full support of the company and organization of going into this with just the possibility this could be my last stop in my career. And hopefully I don't, hopefully I look like I've got a long stretch left,
you're not using a filter, by the way. This is
I'm
real,
not using
Casey,
a filter,
by the way.
But this is something that I'm passionate about, James, and Doug, back to your statement too. Even if you are a growth leader and you're a chief revenue officer and you build the organization, you build the go-to-market strategy, and you are delivering, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue and also margin to your organization, you are still at a significant risk of perhaps the mission of the board is different than your mission, which is driving value to healthcare. And you are at significant risk of being part of a portfolio acquisition which is so big in healthcare IT. You could be the greatest growth leader in the United States and, have a 2-year run wherever you go.
Yeah. That may be as long as it goes. Yeah.
I want to say to our listeners that, I hope as you listen to this episode, you key in on what Casey just said. And one of the things, and we had another guest that talked to a similar concept, which is, when you enter a role, if you have the benefit of taking a leadership role, chief growth officer, chief commercial, chief revenue officer, what have you, go in eyes wide open, ask the hard questions in terms of what is the growth expectation, what is the revenue expectation, and what has growth looked like over the last 3 years. Yeah. Look, it's a mismatch if they want to grow by 100%, but they've been growing at 20% year over year. And they're like, well, we just know it's going to happen and we need you to come in and compress that other 80%. You need to be eyes wide open. And I think, this is not to say, I think generally as salespeople, we are inclined to lean in and say, hey, we're going to pull for the big chain. We're going to pull for the big lever. We're going to stretch. I mean, that's part of our DNA that we're trained to do, that we're trained to coach our team members, that you have to stretch for the big goals. You have to push yourself, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what anyone's saying is to pull back, but it's to be pragmatic around how big can the big goal be. And I think people like yourself, Casey, that are able to lead with intelligence and wisdom and experience and be a voice actually are incredibly valuable to a company, to be that counterweight, to be that voice of perspective. I want to slightly turn back, and I'm going to use Iodine and Commerce, not necessarily as a contrast per se, but for our listeners, I think we would be interested in understanding, is anything changing either in how you with your teams prosecute a go-to-market, or do you see very similar motions in that? And part of, I think, the genesis of the question is Iodine is a incredible, fast-moving AI company in the revenue cycle space. Commerce Bank is a bank that has a healthcare division that is also impacting revenue cycle and cash flow for hospitals. Where do you see the overlap or difference in terms of how you prosecute a go-to-market strategy within this organization?
Yeah, boy, deep question there.
Yeah.
Doug, again, I kind of want to, I want to restate this. I want to tip the hat to Iodine, right?
Yeah.
I saw my role at Iodine as one that I could have been there for 3 to 5 years. They're doing the right things, right? Their headquarters are in Austin, right?
So harder places to be.
You know, I was, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
So at the overlap is the go-to-market strategy is similar in that we focus on the right thing. When I say we, I'm talking about, you know, me, my teams. We're focused on the same thing, which is identify the greatest challenge, clear problem that your solution fits addressing, right? The problem and the solution fit between iodine and commerce are completely different. But what I say is my go-to-market adversely different too. I'm going to say no, right?
Yeah.
We're focused on the problem first, followed by how does our solutions answer that, right? And within that, then who has the desire to receive that answer to drive the quarter and annual revenue back to Commerce Bank. And what I mean by that is the addressable market, do we focus on HCA, you know, or do we focus on the community hospital or do critical access hospital? The interesting thing about Commerce Bank, and this is the contrast, is, you know, iodine software had a very specific ICP, right? They played really well or play really well with larger organizations that have a lot of data and a lot of patients. And so that's, they have a very good approach and good market. With commerce, who within healthcare receives money?
Anybody want money? Anybody?
Yeah.
Show of hands.
Who operates with, you know, payments? Who operates, you know, with receivables? The answer is everyone. And I mean dental offices if we wanted to go target that. And so, you know, I think my greatest challenge in the upcoming months as we set the strategy for 2025 in the go-to-market is the sales teams, the growth teams, you know, the account executives are hungry for direction, right? They're hungry for tell me what not to go do. And it's okay to not focus on everybody, right? It's okay to not focus on a region because there's so much opportunity and a need in this region over here, and you just simply don't have time, right?
Yeah. You got to know what you need to say. You got to know what to say no to. And by the way, a lot of companies really stink at that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because
a lot of leaders
and
are challenged by that.
The fear, it's the FOMO, right? It's the, if I don't do that, if I don't turn that proposal in, even though I know I have very little chance of winning, well, then my boss is going to think I'm not working hard, or, you know, we got to take every shot on goal. Do we really?
Doug,
do we really have to take that shot?
Doug, you just made a comment that you know is, you know, about sales leaders. You know, one of the things that a lot of sales leaders are challenged by and with is making a decision, right? And because the decisions and the go forward for go-to-market strategy, if they don't have the support by the CEO, right? If they don't have the support and understanding that part of your acceleration as an organization is making decisions, even if it's the wrong one, you know, you get that data and test so that you can pivot and adjust and continue to evolve. And Doug, going back to, if a sales leader, regardless of title, doesn't feel empowerment, that they can go make decisions and test the waters and make a mistake to find out what doesn't work and come in and have a discussion as a broader sales leadership team, then, you know, shame on that organization and shame on the sales leaders and who's there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh man, I love that you're talking about creating a culture, a team, a culture of accountability, right? We're not saying just go wild and do whatever you want, but empowerment, right?
That's right.
So support and challenge. We're providing support and we're challenging you to go grow and do more. And I should also say, I think this is our listeners know this, but I just want to be clear, like playing the long game, the infinite game, as Simon Sinek would say, and growth are not mutually exclusive. So
That's right.
You can do both. You guys agree with that? So I want to talk about, to me, the key to that is the team. It is the people who are making it happen, the relationships they build with each other internally, how well we work together, and then how we interact with our customers, our clients. Talk about, Casey, whether you're at a startup or whether you're at a 150-year-old company, what are you looking for from the team, whether the existing team, but also like, hey, here's what we want to, the kind of culture we want to create here. What are you looking for from the team?
And first things that come to mind, right, is I'm looking for team members that understand their part and desire in helping fix healthcare, right? Again, I'm looking for individuals that understand the problem and understand that problem, and that, I'll say their role is I can have a fingerprint on an answer to that problem this week by the following actions, right? I'm looking for people that understand the problem, and I'm looking for people that want to go take action, and they want to go do it quickly, right? I don't believe, going back to, I don't believe that we as individuals have an infinite timeline in our career to go make an impact and change. And here, I'm less focused on, and my bosses might hate this, but I'm less focused on the quarterly result next quarter, in that I want to go impact healthcare and make change and have teams of people that are focused on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to turn here in a moment with James and talk a little bit, Casey, around the journey that you've been on, both as a salesperson, as a leader, and some of the traits that you've taken from your own career to then embody and what you try to drive from a team. But before I do that, I have a couple of tactical questions, if you will. Either in as you've transitioned into commerce or in some prior roles, one, is there a particular sales methodology that you try to adhere to or you found works best, and you really try to orient your team around, whether that's Miller Hyman, Challenger, value-based selling, spend, whatever the nomenclature is there something that has worked well for you that you try to rinse and repeat to some degree as appropriate with your respective teams?
Yeah, I think a sales leader that says, I do this, and this is what I do.
Yeah.
I think they're probably trying to fill you full of some BS.
And or get a job. They're
right.
They're parroting a catchphrase that they think people want to hear.
That's right. Yeah. I believe with everything in me that individuals are constantly learning from pieces of everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can, first thing that comes to mind, one of the first sales training courses that I took was something called Sandler training. And it was this group in Kansas City that, here I am giving them a plug, by the way.
They're still around. They're very,
I know, and now they're going to call me, and
that's right.
now they're going to say, "Let me take your sales."
Yeah, no, Sandler's well known.
But the reason why I bring that up is, that in that course, I learned how to focus on my own personal, individual financial goals and how to break that down into how many deals did I need to get done, break that down into how many calls and meetings did I need to make. And I was able to put my takeaway, and I still love it, is not every salesperson's activity levels and metrics should be the same, right? James probably has a better, close rate and more success in the number of meetings that I need. And so understanding that individuals are different as a sales leader, I now apply. And the other part of that was, getting to the know and asking questions, continuing to ask questions to have clients talk, and understanding their problems. Then I add in blue sheets, right? And strategic sales. I add in spin selling. I mean, there's just the number of things, Doug, that
I love kind of the direction that you've taken this, Casey, and that certainly resonates with me. What I've seen is it's easy, especially if you're going through the motions of moving from one role to the next, that you orient and you talk about, well, I do this particular methodology. The reality is that success typically is a hybrid approach. And, there's elements, I think, from all of these that, as a practicing growth leader, as a practicing sales leader, the more that you can bring in those elements that's best for your market and best for your team, the better the team's going to be. Whether it's thinking about the account structure in a Miller Hyman way, and then what levers you're pulling with the people that have influence or buying decisions, et cetera, whether it's consultative selling, and helping really be more of a value add, regardless of if they buy or not. I think those all have elements of success. It's more so, do you empower, encourage your teams to find ways they can harvest those elements to then put themselves in a position?
Well, let me give you something tangible, Doug, for your listeners. I'll steal Malcolm Gladwell for a minute.
Love that guy.
One of his chapters is 10,000 hours.
Yep.
I mean, I've done coaching and training on specifically 10,000 hours. And, my coaching and training, call it 7 or 8 years ago, was the simple training, which is, hey, continue to work, continue to practice, continue to, do the same thing. The chapter, I look back at it now, I had an aha moment here this past year, which is, how do you as a growth leader, if you're making a career, your career looks like multiple stops, multiple solutions, multiple even, I focused on acute care, then I focused on post-acute care, and I've done different things in my career. So how do I still do 10,000 hours when I'm doing things that are fundamentally different, right? Yeah. And so, I look at, and I encourage my teams now, my commerce team hasn't received this and they will. So for those that are listening, know it's coming. But
sneak preview.
Yeah. How do you define something that is so important that you focus on, prioritize, and practice over and over again in your healthcare IT role in your career, so that you want to be a master? Going back to the 10,000 hours, you want to be the world's best at something, right? And I look at health economy and what is my personal role today in bettering that with solutions and people around me.
Right. And I suspect that doesn't just include understanding the ecosystem, the bits and bytes and the products, which are all important. It's the managing the relationships. It's building the team. It's training the team. It's the leadership side, which I know a lot of us, actually everyone listening, if you're a leader, you didn't just wake up and you're a leader all of a sudden. You were likely at some point in your career an individual contributor, right? And you did certain things and you mastered certain things and you did the 10,000 hours at whatever it was that got you good, that got you where you are. Well, do you apply that to leadership? Do you say, well, I want to be a 10,000 hour leader, builder, culture creator, counterweight?
Well, and part of the way you do that is by listening to the Counterweight.
Right. Clearly. Yeah. There's only 9,990 some more hours to go and you'll have it. Doug and I will be on a continuous podcast. Yeah. I just want to underscore that point of it's practicing these new skills. You're never done. Hey, so a bonus question for you. why or how did you end up getting into sales? Like, why sales?
The answer to that is how did I know that I could go into sales, right? How
you must have been good at persuading someone.
So I'll tell you a very quick story, and there's a longer one we can catch up on, but it's something that I'm confident neither of you know, nor any of our networks.
Yeah.
But on the personal side, when I was in college, I was working and out after dusk by myself on a busy road, and I turned and three late teenage boys were running towards me out of a park. All three had bandanas over their face, and my reaction was to turn and figure out what was going on. And they came up. One put a gun to my head. The other two were on each of my shoulders. And these three kids were probably 16, 17 years old and were holding me up because I had a shoulder bag. And again, one put a gun to my head. And I just kept telling them that it wasn't worth it, that I only had books and, what was in my bag was not worth it. And I just kept saying it over and over again and said, one of the cars that just passed has already called the police. This is not worth it. And they all three looked at me and ran away.
Oh my gosh. Wait, did they take your bag?
No.
Wow.
No.
So wow.
And so whether that was the right call of, should I have just given them the bag and hope for the best? But I looked at that moment in understanding how to connect with all three of them instantly and have the ability to persuade them that they needed to make the right decision for themselves.
Wow.
And
is it fair to say that any subsequent sales scenario, cold calling a CEO, walking into a hospital, interviewing for a job, is a step down in terms of intensity or pressure?
I mean, there's nothing to fear at this point. If you got through that sales presentation, literally came out alive.
I mean, Doug, this is no joke, right? And I haven't shared that story with very many people, but as I tell this, I was probably 19 at the time, and I can still today feel the pressure of the gun.
It never leaves you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Thanks for sharing that. And I mean, first of all, lesson there is don't carry a shoulder bag. Those are bad for your back.
Nobody does
They're
that.
really out of style.
Nobody does that.
That's clearly the lesson.
We've seen a lot of chiropractors will tell you, just don't carry a shoulder bag. That was your first
they
lesson.
Were actually trying to do you a service.
Yeah,
they knew.
And in other news,
they were trying to relieve my back pain.
We're so glad that presentation, if you will, turned out the way it did, and we're so glad that
thankful that you're
here with
now.
us.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for sharing, dude.
Casey, we've gone on a journey here. Once again, congratulations as you've transitioned into Commerce Bank. And I would give a shout out, not just to what you're doing, what you're building upon, but the mission vision that Commerce has. You touched on this at the very beginning, but the role that healthcare finances play in everyday lives is incredibly impactful, and creating solutions that make it easier to manage, navigate, and facilitate those payments in a way that doesn't create life-changing challenges is huge. And so Godspeed, go forth, huge mission. I know you're going to be super impactful. James has a question. I think you probably know this question, given that you listened to some of the pods, but it's still a hard pucker up type of question.
Yeah.
He's going to hit you. That's right.
Yeah, we play hardball here. So you get one answer.
Got it.
And our guests have only given one answer.
Right.
They've never given multiple.
Never tried to walk through the whole.
That's right.
So you've got a big client coming into town, Casey, and they want to have Kansas City barbecue. Where do you take them?
Well, I've got to qualify. How big is the group? Is this?
Yeah. On a biggest, most important client meeting of
I'll get to it.
Your year.
You're going to Joe's and
gas station.
If you're going to lunch with a small group, you're going to the gas station and you're standing in line and you're building a relationship and you're showing them what Kansas City's all about. No doubt.
And you might end up eating outside near the gas pumps, but that's fine.
Once again,
fun fact, did you know that if you're in London and you're looking to take a group in London for barbecue, Oklahoma Joe's, at least they had a location in central London. One of the owners of
you're making this up.
One of the owners of Oklahoma Joe's took the exact menu, all the recipes. You can have Oklahoma Joe's in London.
I did not know that.
Okay. We need our we're
fact
going to
check.
have to go on some I think we have to go on a fact-checking mission, don't we, Doug?
Well,
is that in our budget?
We
Speaking of which, we need some more sponsors.
Zero.
Please sponsor Doug and I's trip to London to go eat barbecue. Go all the way to London to eat Joe's.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Awesome. Well, good answer. Good answer.
Yeah. Casey, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you for making time and joining us and sharing not just your journey, but the things that you're grappling with, how you're thinking about growth, how you're thinking about leading your team. This has been a great episode of The Counterweight. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time and for having me, for sure.
Thanks, Casey. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are excited to bring new episodes out each week. We are incredibly grateful to our guests and our listeners. Let us know what you think by commenting on the episodes. The Counterweight is honored to be sponsored by The Echelon by Amy Teskey. The Echelon is intentional about building community and sharing expertise for healthcare technology sellers and leaders. The Echelon provides members curated content, education materials, and the ability to connect with peers and leaders specific to healthcare technology. Sales can be hard. It is made easier when you are part of a community that is focused on enabling you to be your best. Take an opportunity to invest in yourself. Join the Echelon. Use the code Counterweight and gain the ability to participate for the first 30 days at no cost. Thank you to Amy Teskey and the Echelon for your sponsorship. We are also proudly sponsored by the Upper Right Corner, which provides advice on strategic growth, including growth assessments and strategy, go-to-network planning, sales leadership, team coaching, and fractional leadership roles. For more, visit theupperrightcorner.com. Lastly, we are proud to be sponsored by Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. Waypoint Healthcare is a focused consulting organization helping health systems, providers, and organizations develop and implement patient engagement strategies. Waypoint HCS provides strategic consulting and patient engagement technology guidance and selection. Waypoint also helps support implementations and ongoing program management. For more, visit Waypoint HCS's LinkedIn page or waypointhcs.com. Thank you to our guests and our listeners. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe, like, and follow, and we look forward to joining you again next Wednesday for another episode of The Counterweight.